want to touch on the importance of February here, and it just every year, I don't know if it's because getting older, time flies faster, time flies because you're having fun. I don't know what you want to attach that to, but I'm doing both. I'm getting older and I'm having fun, so maybe it's a little of both. But today we're going to talk about just that. We're going to talk about time flying and watching the calendar and making sure that you're getting your to-dos done. January is behind us. First day of February here, and I'm in between client properties. I just got home yesterday, and I've got one in the middle of the week here in Michigan, and then I leave Thursday, I believe it is, for Ohio and Kentucky, back on the road again. So busy time of the year, and one of the things to focus on, guys, is going into February is making sure that if you haven't done if you weren't able to do any of that ever so important scouting at the end of January after the season. Now the guys in the south that are still hunting kind of envy you this time of the year, because I start missing being in the tree stand already. But if kind of relate this to you guys in the south, you have another like Ohio, for example, it's the end of this week, down further south. You guys run until the end of the month. So just one of those things. Get out, making sure after the season that your scouting is done and handled, and you are taking all those field notes from the fall and all of your scouting notes post-season, and having them listed and tied together, making that make sense, looking at some things on the ground now that you were looking at from the tree stand that you just couldn't be invasive with during the season, and were maybe a little hesitant to make that last move to the location that you needed to. Maybe had some critters bypassing you, maybe had some habitat change throughout the year last year that you didn't quite counter on or quite see before it was too late. That is probably one of the first things to focus on in February, is just making sure that you get out, boots on the ground, and do set a weekend aside, or at least a day aside on your properties. Do not don't burn yourself out. Don't go out onto your private parcels, public ground, whatever that is, and spend hours and hours and days studying, and go out, kind of hone what you had last year. Check those spots out. Cover the ground. You should have maybe pins on hunts from last year. You should have pins on aerials. You should have everything that you're watching kind of unfold last year, and now you're going in and just making it make sense. You probably had that gut feeling where you should have been, or what you should have been doing. Now's the time to go in, use those aerial photos, and go in, check those spots, take some ribbon with you if you think that's stand location that you maybe had been eyeballing from the past hunts at the end of the year there. If you thought that's where you needed to be, go and ribbon that spot off, make it make sense, then you've got a strong starting point to start in the fall. And I'll be the first to tell you guys, it's a huge tool going into August, when you start finishing those tree stand locations off and start hanging them sets, trimming those shooting lanes off. It's a huge booster, if you will, and it's a great way to get the season off on the right foot. Get pull over here for a second to wait for a gentleman, so we'll finish this up here in the parking lot. That's the first thing. Go in and focus on those spots, hang those ribbons on those stands, move those, get an area where that box blind should have been, maybe, or whatever the case is, and really hone in on that. The second thing is paying attention to your habitat, getting a solid idea on what habitat improvement should be done. If you haven't started your habitat improvements already, there should be a kind of a checklist again, and maybe that's what we'll label this video. The February checklist. Just going in and making sure that those areas that you need to improve. Are your bedding area, your doe bedding areas, first and foremost, are your doe bedding areas as strong as you thought they were? If they're not, be sure to go in and find out what usable hingeable material that you have in that location. On client properties this weekend in northern Michigan here, and they, that's why each property is so different and so diverse in what they have to offer, is because that property there, it's so thick and it's all cedar, balsam, very few if any maples to use as hinge cutting. Got a lot of popple, so they're starting with cleaning out. They've got a mulcher. I can get a mulcher and have a mulcher as well to get that stuff cleaned out underneath and to set those hubs in, or clean the bedding areas out in general and lay that structure on the ground, and and to let that browse jump, stuff jump, and really get that browse to the feeding requirement, so it meets the intake requirement on those bedding areas. Because like we said in the past, guys, is your bedding area is only as strong as the browse that backs it. And sadly, probably 9 times out of 10 when I go on client properties that we start looking at doe bedding areas, hopefully adjacent to the food sources, they're not as strong as they thought they were. There's not as many of the deer that you hoped to have in there. And the main focus is, and we've touched on this before in many other videos, but since we're on this topic now, your main focus is to place as much of that doe drama as you can on and around those food sources. And what that does is that pulls all that drama, it pulls all that attention out to those plots. And no matter how small your parcel is, 5 acres to 500 acres, that is a key that has to be done, and that gets those focused on those plots, which creates that ever so sought after depth of your property. Without it, you don't have that. And I had just recently, I was actually on the road last night and had a comment come in on the channel here. It's a great comment. It's trying to make buck bedding, and I've said that before. I've touched on that in some other videos. Is there's such a focus of we need to make buck beds. We need to make buck beds. Well, what happens is your doe bedding, what I see most of the time is your doe bedding isn't as strong as you think it is. And when you're creating those bedding areas, you end up making doe bedding areas, because those are the first the first spot that the does run to or retreat to after the food source, and because there's no cover in between, or it's not as strong as you thought it was. So size of those bedding areas on those food plots, that's a question that I had here recently. And as far as the does, that all depends on the size of the plot, guys. It really does. The size of the plot and the number of deer in your area kind of determines that. The bigger the plot, the bigger the hub, or the bigger the bedding area, your doe bedding adjacent to that food source. I have many times, if you can extend a plot, if you can, without getting busted, so that plot is producing just as much as you can possibly make it produce, those are the plots that you want to, or those are the areas that you want to pile that many more does on. And like I said, what it does is it's kind of like putting, it's a good example, I guess, would be putting drain tile in a field. If any of you out there are, farmers, let's say, or excavation, it's putting tile in draws all that water to one source, and then it empties it out in areas where, it's not going to ruin your fields, or so you can prep the field. And that's the same thing with does, is you got to collect, you got to absorb, maybe is the word, you got to absorb all those does and place them on that food source. If you don't place them, you have to have a large parcel in order to not put that much emphasis on that area. But like I said, sadly, as I see on the small parcels, that's a huge deal, where that is just not the thing to focus on. Everybody's focused on buck bedding. Before you know it, when the bedding areas that you are making are not buck bedding areas, you are promoting doe bedding. So something really huge to watch for. That's a big deal on the 140 that I've got purchased here with the sale of our house, hopefully getting on to do some habitat improvements here real shortly. And that's a perfect example. If you start making those improvements out on an area like that, you better hope that your bedding, you don't create food in a spot that you cannot place does on, because if you do, they're going to overtake islands. The does are going to go wherever the nearest dry spot is to bed. And that's where those island settings and private grounds with swamp and all that stuff around it, really the does take over. Before you know it, the bucks are bedding out on your neighbors that do have high and dry areas, or they're bedding out on state ground. And by the time they get to your location, it's dark, right? It's nocturnal. So that's the second thing, kind of a long-winded second thing, but that's a long thing, or a second thing to focus on in February, is to make sure that you are polishing that habitat, starting with your or starting to improve the habitat starting with your doe bedding areas. The third thing, which may sound kind of not as important right now to a lot of folks, as far as it doesn't have anything to do with habitat, but it has to do with safety. Many times, I'm guilty of it right now. I've got 2 stands left in the tree that are coming out. Hopefully, I can't do it today, but hopefully tomorrow. Taking the time to get these tree stands out of the tree. It's a huge deal. We all focus on what we need to do to the habitat, what we need to do to focus on our hunt to make it better. And sadly, and I'm guilty of it, like I said, I've still got 2 hanging in the tree myself. But what happens is we leave those stands in the trees and it becomes a hazard. Now, if you leave them in there and the squirrels start getting onto the chewing on them straps, it could cost you some money that you don't need to spend, that you could be putting into habitat improvements. 2, it's a huge safety deal, guys, and we can't do anything to properties. I can't visit you. You can't go out and do these improvements that you need to do. Or if you are busted up because you took a spill out of a stand because of not falling out of the stand, but something breaking, it's a huge deal. So many properties that I'm on, ground blinds obviously are something different. You want to pick those up because they don't get smashed if you're in an area with snow load. If you're in the deep south or down south at all, ground blinds, I see a lot of those left out that get sun bleached. Take them down. It's some work, obviously. But the tree stand focus, ladder stand focus, guys, to me is something that I see time and time again on client properties that they're not taken down, and it never fails. Each and every year, I'm contacted about someone falling, and usually that's not. I'm not contacted by the hunter, the gentleman, the young lady that I helped do their property, whatever the case is. It's usually not them, and usually who it is it's a relative or somebody that reaches out and says, hey, so-and-so is pretty busted up and won't be able to meet or won't be able to do this or that. So that's kind of a little sensitive topic there. Get those stands out. Don't just undo them. You always hear you can just loosen them up so they don't grow to the tree. Well, that's true. I do have some folks that actually go out and they kind of got quick snaps on ladder stands that go out and put chains around them, so they don't come off the tree, but they don't have to haul it in and out. I've got folks that lay them on the ground, take the straps off from them. There's all kinds of different things to do. I just recommend just taking them down, putting them back in the barn or the garage, the basement, wherever they are, dry, and getting the most out of those straps, and first and foremost, making it a safe deal. So those are kind of three things here going into February to focus on. There are many more. If we add a fourth one in, it would be to focus on your more of your habitat improvement. Start the process that you focused on, that you after the design was done. If you did it, or if I did it, someone else did it, and it's a design that you wholeheartedly believe in, that fits your property, start those projects, get those done. Make sure that you're being safe with those hinge cuts. Make sure that you're putting the hinge cuts, if your property needs it at all, putting those in the right place, and start doing that habitat improvement. But first and foremost, on that habitat improvement, be sure that it's not, you're not hinge cutting that stuff too close to your tree stands. Make sure that that's a well thought out plan before you start. And I'm not trying to put the brakes on any of your projects that you got going on right now, especially like today. It's 17 degrees here in mid-Michigan, and I'm heading out of state here at the end of the week, and the sun's shining, and it's perfect time to get out and make these habitat improvements and to be able to jumpstart your farms for next year. But It all has to have a reason, and just do not. If you're listening to this and you're heading into the woods with a chainsaw right now and you don't have a design in place, and it's not laid out on an aerial or put on the wall or put on your phone, then I recommend pumping the brakes a little bit and slowing down, making sure those improvements are really what your property needs as to set the 2021 season here up to be a success, not a failure. So that would be the fourth thing, guys. We'll see you here on the road shortly. We'll keep bringing projects to you along the way. I've done many this year that I wasn't able to take pictures of. I don't focus on, obviously I don't have my camera and my phone going when I'm on private properties, doing these analysis packages with my clients. This weekend my son was actually able to go with me, so we did a little bit of that, had a good time, and put two great properties together. We've got a long list of folks this year that have serious potential. That I'm looking forward to it, because there's going to be some serious deer hit the ground in 2021. So thanks, guys, for tuning in.